Are you fortunate that we live in a free state? Are you all going to come out on November 8th to make sure we keep it that way? Well, thank you all for coming. Please have a seat. It's wonderful to be back. It's wonderful to see everybody here back in northeastern Miami-Dade County. We, when these people run for different offices, they chirp, they say a lot of stuff. They usually don't produce very much in this day and age in terms of results. And I'm here to say that I'm proud that I made promises about what I would do as governor, and I have fulfilled those promises as your governor. One of the things I said we would do is that I would ensure that under my leadership, the state of Florida would be the most pro-Israel state in the United States. And we promised it, and we have delivered on it. Before I even took office, you had this issue of Airbnb that was going to discriminate against Jews in Israel, those who lived in Judea and Samaria. And so I announced, actually it was in South Florida, as the governor-elect, I wasn't even in office, I said, in the state of Florida, this will not stand. We will take action, and we will take action very quickly. And we did. And so once I became governor, we activated our anti-BDS legislation. We identified Airbnb as falling under that. And a couple weeks later, Airbnb reversed its policy. We were also able to sign, my first year in office, the strongest law that combats anti-Semitism anywhere in the country. And we want, like at our universities, for example, how we would treat somebody engaging in racism, we're going to treat the same if you're engaging in anti-Semitism and if you're treating people differently on the basis of that. And so we did that bill and signed it during our trade mission, actually, in 2019 to Israel. We signed the bill at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, which I helped do when I was in Congress. And I said the first trade mission we would do as governor would be to Israel, and we fulfilled that promise. Thankfully, we were able to get a foreign trip under our belt before COVID hit, because it was a little bit difficult to travel once all that stuff happened for a while, but we did it. We had a massive, massive trade mission, and no one's ever done this many things, and we've ended up having relationships with universities. Our space industry has great relations with Israeli space, and we've got a number of businesses in Florida that are helping us do different things. I got Israeli company cleaning algae in Lake Okeechobee. We've got an Israeli company working with us on Alzheimer's. One of the things I also did on that trip was, I was a member of Congress, and what they would always say if you would go over to Israel, like the State Department, they'd say, you can't go, to Judea and Samaria. You can't do that because they said it was, quote, occupied territory. I know because I know the history, it's disputed territory. They are amongst the most historic Jewish lands. And yes, there was a partition agreement on the table in 1948, but the Arabs rejected that agreement and they decided to go to war. So we've had these conflicts ever since. But it is not correct to say that. It is correct to say it's disputed. And so I was the first major elected official in America to hold a public event in Judea and Samaria. We did an event. We did an event at Ariel University. So, and now actually you have elected officials, they're more willing to do these because I think we really led the charge on that and we were happy to be able to do it. We've also done a lot in the state of Florida to help provide security for our Jewish day schools. And if you look about what's happening in other states, I mean, there are some states right now where Jews are getting singled out for attacks, criminal acts. And it happens, unfortunately, very frequently. So we are not going to let the Jewish community be some piñata in Florida where people feel free to attack. We're going to support. And so we've done millions of dollars every year in the budget for that, and we're happy to be able to do it. We were also able to provide, in terms of our Florida standards for education, robust and enhanced Holocaust education standards so that our students understand about the evils of the Holocaust. They understand the truth about the Holocaust. And we've also provided a lot of funding for various Holocaust museums throughout the state of Florida since I've been governor. We're very proud, and this is another big promise that I made. I said, if you elect me, not only will I preserve Florida's school choice programs for parents, we will expand school choice options for parents. And we've done that. Biggest expansion in history. We're not only doing it, and of course the beginning of it was really focusing on the poorest of the poor families, mostly working single mothers who, were making very low wages, and that's obviously the most important place to be. But there's a bigger demand than just that. You got a lot of working families, even middle-class families, where it's hard to afford the full tuition, particularly in a place like South Florida. So we've worked hard, to raise that income threshold so that more families could participate in the program. And ultimately, we have about 85% of Florida families are eligible to participate. Now, we don't necessarily have enough supply because that's dependent on the market and how they want to do it, but we feel really, really blessed to have been able to provide that increase in availability of scholarships. I know there's more that we're going to do. I know, for example, we're going to continue to expand the scholarships for students with disabilities. It's very important, and we're going to do it. We were also able to actually be right here. This was in 2021. Unfortunately, it was right after I was here to do these bill signings. We had the terrible tragedy down the road, with Champlain Towers. But we were able to sign into law a bill to guarantee every Florida student in our school system a moment of silence to start their day. And this is something that's important for a lot of students to be able to have time to reflect and, yes, to be able to pray. And many school districts had been doing that, but not everyone was willing to do it. And so we wanted to make sure we had an even playing field. And so we did do that. And we also signed here a bill to authorize United Hatzalah to be able to provide emergency services. And of course, what happened right after that was, of course, the tragedy at Surfside, and United Hatzalah was there in a major way, helping the families, helping folks. And I would say that, of all the things we've dealt with since I've been governor, I mean, that's been one of the worst tragedies. But what I saw from this community was I saw people banding together. I saw people stepping up to the plate, doing whatever they could to help their friends, their families, and their neighbors. And it really brought out a lot of the best that we see in our state and in our country. And so this community, I think, is a special community. I think that they've been through an awful lot, but I'll tell you, there's going to be some really, really good days ahead for the folks here, and you see just how many people that want to come move down here. They want to be a part of it because people see how special it is. We really want to make Florida a family-friendly state. We think it is a family-friendly state, but we want to continue to do whatever we can to do that. So, I was thinking about some of the economic challenges that we face, and I think the biggest challenges that we face are largely driven by bad federal policies where they've fueled a really significant inflation, the worst we've seen in 4 decades, and they've also reduced our ability to produce domestic American energy, which is not only causing ramifications on our economy, hitting people in the pocketbook, it's empowering some of the worst regimes around the world. And just think about it, we were functionally energy independent 2 years ago. Then they do these policies which have not worked. They're making it more difficult to produce basic forms of energy, and so they're begging Nicolas Maduro, please give us some more. I mean, are you kidding me? And then they're going to beg the Saudis for oil. And what does the Saudis do? OPEC cuts production. And people say, well, the Saudis are playing politics against Biden and all this stuff. And I said, they probably are playing politics against him. He's playing footsie with Iran. And of course they don't like that. Iran is their enemy. And it's our enemy too. Why you would try to empower Iran after what we've witnessed? If you go back, from 2015 to the present, what did we saw? We saw the Iran nuclear deal, which I opposed and many people in Florida opposed, that did nothing but empower the mullahs in Iran. They got massive amounts of money. They got cash flown in on an airplane, but then they got massive amounts of money pouring into their bank accounts. And what did they use that money for? Did they use it to build a strong and vibrant society? No, they used it to fund terrorism throughout the Middle East. They're sending it to Hezbollah and groups like that. And so we know what this regime is going to do with that. And so President Trump came in, he said the gig is up. We are not going to do this failed deal. We're going to hold the Iranians accountable. And that dried up the spigot for them. They did not have the same wherewithal to project terrorism around the world. They were really hurting financially, and it caused the regime itself to be on more wobbly footing. And so we've seen the policy that failed. We've seen the policy not only that succeeded in weakening the Iranians, then what has happened? You have the Arab countries like UAE, the Saudis behind the scenes, wanting to work with the U.S. and Israel. Could you imagine that just 10 or 20 years ago? Because they understand that we all have common interests to fight back against Iranian designs. And so to go back on that, that's going to cause worse relations with Israel, with the Gulf Arab states, and it's not going to produce anything tangible by playing footsie with the Ayatollah. It just doesn't work. So it's very sad to be able to see that, but I think it's part of miscalculation writ large, what we're seeing geopolitically. And look, having our own domestic energy production makes us more secure. We don't have to worry about the Iranians. We don't have to worry about Maduro. We can handle our own destiny. And that's what we should be doing. But I was thinking about, because of how expensive things are with the inflation and with the energy prices, what can we do in Florida to continue to help people? I mean, we've got the biggest budget surplus in the history of the state. We've got our unemployment rate just came out on Friday, 2.5%, second lowest on record in the history of the state. And I think Miami is even lower than that. I think Miami-Dade is like 2% unemployment. And so you see that, And you see, we've got great reserves, great wherewithal. So the inflation, our budget's $109 billion. That's budget dust for what they're doing in Washington in terms of the printing. But what can we do to make an impact on families? So in this current budget where we put, right now we have a gas tax holiday in effect for the state of Florida. So our gas prices in Florida are actually the 5th lowest in the country right now because we did the fuel holiday. We did, for the whole year, we put into effect no sales tax on baby items like diapers, wipes, and baby clothes. And if you think about it, when you're raising families, it's expensive. And we have a 5, a 4, and a 2-year-old. And my wife, when we got into governor, we had 2 and 9 months. We didn't even have the 3rd yet. And my wife is just saying, now the 5 and the 4-year-old, they're long out of diapers. And she's just like, why did you wait till the 4th year of governor to do the diaper holiday? Well, but we learned from it that, hey, this could be good. So why don't we try to expand it? So what we're going to do next year, we're going to do a permanent sales tax exclusion for all childhood items, not just diapers and wipes and clothes. We're going to do strollers and cribs and all the things you really need to raise kids. That's going to save some money. We also understand that people that have to work hard to put food on the table, how can we work on reducing some costs there? So what we're going to do is we're going to implement, for all of our commuters in Florida, a 50% reduction in tolls statewide. And so you'll be able to save some money there. And we're actually doing no tax on pet food too, because you got to feed the pets. So we're going to do that. But we also, as part of being a family-friendly state, we want parents to be able to send their kids to school and get a good quality education. That's one of the reasons why we signed a bill called the Parents' Rights in Education, which said basically it's inappropriate to be doing things like gender ideology in the elementary schools. You should not have that in there. We're not going to have... It's inappropriate to be teaching a 6-year-old that they were born in the wrong body or telling an 8-year-old that they can change their gender if they want to. Now, that is happening in other parts of the country. Don't let them tell you any different. It is happening. But it isn't going to happen here. We're going to focus on teaching these kids to read and to write and to add and subtract, teach them science, teach them history, teach them what schools are supposed to be teaching. And this is something that people, can really be unifying, because if as a parent, if you want to discuss some of that other stuff, that's up to you. Not my cup of tea, but fine. But that should not be imposed on all these students when the majority of families do not want that in the school system. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing we did to guarantee that our girls and our women athletes have the ability to compete fairly and with integrity in competitions. They had, you have this swimmer at the in the NCAA, 3 years on the men's swim team, and then switches to the women's swim team, and then wins the national championship. What about the women that would have come in, the woman that would have come in first? What about the woman that may not have qualified at the end because of the cutoff? So it's taking away opportunities from girls. It's taking away opportunity for women athletes. So we've made sure in Florida, that's not what we're going to do. Girls have the opportunity to compete, and they can compete fair and square. How many of you have moved to Florida within the last 4 years? Okay. Good. Now, of those who just raised their hand, if I had not won governor 4 years ago, how many would have still come and moved to Florida? Okay, not many. Yeah, well, look, it's a free state. People like it. Now, part of the reason part of the reason we've been we've been a place people wanted to move to, of course, invest in, but just the tourism that we had. In 2021, we set a domestic tourism record in Florida. And if you looked at foreign tourism to the United States in 2021, our state represented almost 45% of all foreign tourism to America. But one of the reasons, if you talk to realtors around the state, one of the things that some of the people would tell them, because they say, why are you coming to Florida? And they have different reasons, but one of the things that kept popping up was safety. Because they're in these other states where they are not keeping the streets safe. Some of them have defunded law enforcement. Some of them have elected prosecutors that don't believe in enforcing the law. They want to pick and choose which laws they can enforce. You go to like Los Angeles now, the women can't even walk outside to go shopping with jewelry on. They tell you got to take off all your jewelry. You look at what's happening in New York City on these subways. It's a total disaster, but it didn't happen by accident. It's a result of leftist policies that just don't work, and they don't work at keeping people safe. So in Florida, we've been very clear. We are a law and order state in the state of Florida. That's the way it's got to be. So it's important, and it's important to support the people that wear the uniform. When they're out there risking themselves to support us. When the Surfside Champlain Tower South collapsed, you had these firefighters, descending on there. They worked that for a long time. We had the Israelis come in. It was unbelievable what was going on. But everyone was working hard. They were risking to be able to help other people, and so that's just what they do. And so I'm proud to say in Florida, while other states and cities were slashing funding for law enforcement, we did 2 years in a row for law enforcement, fire, rescue. We did $1,000 bonuses for everyone in Florida 2 years in a row. And we enacted legislation that prohibits local governments in Florida from defunding law enforcement. We're not going to let it happen. This doesn't make any sense. Another reason why people came was because, of course, you had 4 years ago, we knew certain issues, school choice, crime, we knew some of these would be issues, but nobody was anticipating that there'd be a global pandemic. But even if you would have sat me down 4 years ago to said I was not a governor yet, say, Ron, I think there's going to be a respiratory virus, a new respiratory virus, prepare for that. I would have never in a million years thought that would have given license to governors around this country to lock kids out of school for a year, to forcibly shutter houses of worship while they have the liquor stores and the strip clubs open, but they won't let you go attend religious services. And so it represented a test about how durable our freedoms really are. And I'm just proud to say that in the state of Florida, we led by facts, not by fear. We lifted you up rather than grind you down, and we protected your freedoms, your jobs, and our kids' education better than any other state. And the thing about it was there was just massive hysteria. Obviously, people were politicizing it for their own agendas. You had a lot of fear-mongering in the media and all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, every decision I was making, to protect people's livelihoods and freedom and education and businesses, we got massive amounts of blowback. People would attack us and everything like that. But throughout all of it, I was much more concerned with saving your jobs than I was with protecting my own job, because that's what a leader does. My job is to stand out there, stand on that wall and take the arrows so you don't have to. And that's what we did in Florida, and we stuck to what was right. We followed the data, and we didn't get swayed by a lot of the nonsense. And then guess what happened? Every time we do something, kids in school, there'd be hysteria. And then 6 months later, everyone would follow what Florida had done at the beginning. We saw it time and time again on all this other stuff. But it's a lesson for us that our freedoms are more fragile than maybe we had thought, certainly more than I had thought just a few years ago, to see what had happened. And I really feel had Florida not been there in the breach fighting, I think this country would have gone in a much worse direction. So we served a very valuable purpose, not just here, but even beyond our border. And I bring that up just because I believe that had that election 4 years ago gone the other way, that crisis would have been handled radically differently than how I handled it. I think the state would have had suffered California-style punishing lockdowns. I think we would have thrown into jeopardy millions of people's livelihoods. I think it had massive amounts of business failures. Some of these states, as bad as the California policies were, a lot of their jobs are remote tech jobs. Florida, that's not necessarily how it is. Our bread and butter is leisure, hospitality. These are people that needed to put food on the table. And so we went from what would have happened, which would have been the destruction of those industries, to having a 2021 where they never did better. And that's just a result of leadership, and that's a result of decision making. And so we were close in 18. I think you look now in 2022, I'm able to say that the things that I promised, not only did I deliver, I over-delivered on what I promised I would do. And how many elected officials do that? Not very many. And so if you look from education, if you look from law and order, if you look at what we've done for our natural resources and our environment, we've done way more than any governor's ever done on restoring the Everglades. All the things down the line we said we would do, we have done. And so a lot of people appreciate it. I think there's going to be a lot of people who didn't even vote 4 years ago who recognize, hey, the governor was there for me. I'm going to come out there and be there for him. But we can't be complacent. We can't be complacent about this. We got to understand that these are tough fights. And there's a lot of folks, there's folks out there that have very, very entrenched views and interests against all the things that we believe in. They want to eliminate our school choice programs. They want to change Florida from being a law and order state to be a state more like you see in LA and San Francisco, where you have very weak on crime policies. There's people that want to do that. There are people that don't believe in providing tax relief to families like we've done. That is out there, and there's definitely people who would want to pursue mandates and restrictions in the future if the opportunity presented itself. And if you look at a thing like we've done in Florida with the school children, the CDC has now added to the childhood immunization schedule COVID shots for young kids. And what's going to happen is there's going to be some school districts around the country that are going to take what the CDC did, use that as justification, and tell parents, you don't get your kid the COVID booster shot, they can't come to school. They're already trying it in D.C. They're trying it on the West Coast. You're going to now see more people do it. In Florida, you have to worry about that because I already prohibited those mandates in our schools. That's your decision. And so as long as I'm here, as long as I'm in charge, you aren't going to have to worry about that as parents. That's